The Lysis is another of Plato's early dialogues, which focuses on the issue of friendship. The dialogue begins by being framed as Socrates reminiscing over a past event. He recounts how, one day, he was walking back from the academy to the Lyceum. Here, Plato is not referring to the Platonic academy, which he would later establish, but rather the religious sanctum from which Plato's academy derived its name. Furthermore, the Lyceum here is also referring to a religious sanctum and not the school which Aristotle would eventually establish, which was once again derived from the name of the precinct. However, this archaic Lyceum had long been used as a place where philosophers, poets, and sophists would gather to discourse. From the very outset, it would appear that Plato is still defending Socrates against the charge of moral degeneracy, depicted as transversing between the centres of high learning and good religious citizenship. Whilst en route to the Lyceum, Socrates is stopped by some young men who invite him to join them in a newly erected pailestra, a wrestling school or gymnasium, for conversation. Here it emerges that one of the men, Hippothalles, has become infatuated with the boy Lysis, the character for whom the dialogue has been named, and that Hippothalles has rather unsuccessfully been attempting to woo Lysis through praise and verse, so much so that the boy thinks of him as obnoxious. The Lysis, and much of the rest of Plato's work, cannot be discussed without an understanding of the social conventions at play in Athens regarding homosexual relationships between men and boys. In Athens, and some other ancient Greek city-states, pederasty was a socially acknowledged form of relationship between an adult male, called the erastes, and the younger male, called the eromenos, who were usually in their teens. These relationships were sexual, but also, as idealized by Plato, meant to take on the form of a mentoring relationship, with the man wooing the boy and taking him under their wing, providing them with guidance and education. Returning to the dialogue, Socrates asks Hippothalles about his seductive technique, and on affirming his continual praise, criticizes him for inflating the boy, thus making it harder for him to catch, as per 205d to 206a. "O you ridiculous Hippothalles, do you compose and chant a triumph song on yourself before you have won the victory?" "It is not on myself, Socrates," he replied, "that I either compose or chant it." "You think not," I said. "Then what is the truth of it?" he asked. "Most certainly," I replied, "it is you whom these songs refer, for if you prevail on your favourite, and he is such as you describe, all that you have spoken and sung will be so much glory to you, and a veritable eulogy upon your triumph in having secured such a favourite as that. Whereas, if he eludes your grasp, the higher the terms of your eulogy of your favourite, the greater will seem to be the charms and virtues which you have lost, and you will be ridiculed accordingly. Hence, anyone who deals wisely in love matters, my friend, does not praise his beloved until he prevails, for fear of what the future may have in store for him. And besides, these handsome boys, when so praised and extolled, become full of pride and haughtiness. Do you not think so?" Socrates then offers to meet the boy himself, and shows Hippothalles the correct method by which to woo him. So now the question can be asked, what is the purpose of the framing of this dialogue through the discussion with Hippothalles, rather than directly cutting through to the discussion between Socrates and Lysis around friendship? Firstly, it focuses the dialogue on the issue of desire and friendship. It shows Hippothalles as almost drunk in his love for Lysis, but incapable of consummating his love due to an inability to communicate with his beloved. Socrates rebukes Hippothalles for praising his beloved, but offers to show how he can be appropriately engaging in discourse, insisting that there is a conversational art to winning over friends and lovers. At one level, this is an attempt by Socrates to show how Hippothalles and the reader can overcome their love drunkenness through the art of philosophical dialogue. If we cannot intellectually engage with the target of our affection, then we will never truly make a friend or lover of this person. From another perspective, the warning against our beloved could be interpreted as a warning against the dangers of self-certainty. One who thinks of themselves as wise, elevated, perfect, has no desire to seek knowledge or understanding, antithetical to the pursuit of philosophy. Thus, the first step of the philosopher, as friend, lover, or educator, is to lance the inflated ego of the interlocutor to make learning possible. This deflation leaves a feeling of emptiness and a desire to fill this emptiness with wisdom, and it is this desire which gives birth to the philosopher. Socrates accompanies Hippothales and the others inside the Palaestra, where the boys are conducting sacrifices according to the Hermetic festival, which Socrates remarks is a time where men and boys may intermingle. The boys are playing dice in one area, but instead of directly approaching Lysis, Socrates and the other men sit down and commence conversation, which slowly draws Lysis in, despite his apparent shyness. Lysis and one of his friends, called Menexenus, approaches the men and begin conversing with Socrates, who playfully questions the boys as to whom is superior, which is ended when Menexenus is called away to give sacrifice. At this point, Socrates engages Lysis in an elenchus, where he, through a series of statements, convinces Lysis that he is currently a slave to his parents, as they do not permit him to do anything that he wishes, such as driving chariots or playing with his mother's loom, and puts other slaves, including his tutors, in charge of him. When Socrates asks why this is, Lysis replies that it is because he is not yet of age, to which Socrates retorts that although there are many things that he is not allowed to do, there are others, such as reading, writing and playing the lyre, which they will permit him without restraint. When asked to explain this, Lysis states, as per 209c, "I suppose," he said, "because I understand these things, but not those others." "Very well," I said, "my excellent friend. So it is not your coming of age that your father is waiting for as the time for entrusting you with everything, but on the day when he considers you to have a better intelligence than him, he will entrust to you with himself and all that is his." Socrates then teases out this point of knowledge and learning as the escape from his current servitude, nearly telling Hippothales that this is the means by which to converse with the object of affection, before stopping himself to prevent Hippothales' covert observation from being discovered. So what is the point of this initial dialogue with Lysis? It would appear to give a relatively compressed and neat example of the appropriate use of the elenchus process to deflate the initial and wrong-headed opinions of the interlocutor. Lysis engages admirably from Plato's standpoint because he accepts his lack of knowledge and answers in short and direct manner, as befits dialectic, rather than the longer methods of rhetoric which Socrates deplores in the Gorgias and Protagoras. Secondly, the dialogue reinforces a theme that exists in many of Plato's dialogue, that knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge is the key to self-improvement, and freedom from the evils of the world which can be brought on by ignorance. Finally, we cannot ignore that Socrates here is being presented as a scrupulous adherent of convention in the art of love in this dialogue. He does not hound after Lysis, and he is depicted as not interfering with the religious duties of the boys, while simultaneously his dialectic is seen as improving the youths. At the same time, Lysis is shown as the quote-unquote perfect, beautiful boy, just demonstrating intelligence and appropriate shyness. This clearly is a continuation of the defense of Socrates' character. The dialogue now moves on to its third and most important section, a discussion on the nature of friendship. Menexenus returns and Lysis requests Socrates deflate him in the same manner that Lysis himself was deflated. Socrates thus begins by praising the friendship between Lysis and Menexenus, before asking Menexenus what the nature of friendship is. First, Socrates considers whether the lover or the beloved is the friend. Menexenus affirms that there is no difference. Both become friends when one loves another. Socrates rejects this as the beloved could hate the lover, per 212b and c. I said, "Do you mean that both become friends mutually, when there is only one loving the other?" "Yes, I think so," he replied. "But, I ask you, is it not possible for one loving not to be loved by him whom he loves?" "It is. But again, may he not even be hated while loving? This, I imagine, is the sort of thing that lovers do sometimes seem to incur with their favourites. They love them with all their might, yet they feel either that they are not loved in return, or that they are actually hated." Socrates goes on further to examine the argument that those who cannot love truly, who Socrates describes as animals or children, can still be loved, and thus the beloved can be a friend to a lover, even as the lover is an enemy to the beloved. However, this leads to an absurd conclusion as per 231b. And yet, it is a gross absurdity, my dear friend, I should say rather an impossibility, that one should be an enemy to one's friends and a friend to one's enemy. Socrates carries the argument a little further, finally querying Menexenus whether their investigations may have gone astray, to which Lysis butts in, saying they have. At this point, Socrates turns his attention back to Lysis and commences with a new proposition. Socrates now puts forward that, according to the poets, God draws together like and like, and that perhaps friendship is a form of likeness. To this, Lysis agrees, but then Socrates argues against this position because evil can surely not be friend to evil, because, as per 214b and c, we suppose that the nearer a wicked man approaches to a wicked man, and the more he consorts with him, the more hateful he becomes, for he injures him, and we consider it impossible that injurer and injured should be friends. Socrates goes on in 214c and d to reject that evil can even be friends with itself, due to their own internal strife. What, I believe, they mean is that the good are like one another, and are friends, while the bad, as it is also said of them, are never like even their own selves, being so ill-balanced and unsteady, and when a thing is unlike itself and variable, it can hardly become like or friend to anything else. Socrates now leads Lysis to modify this statement to friendship only being in the likeness amongst the good, as opposed to amongst the evil. However, Socrates once again rejects this definition. He argues that to be a friend, one must be useful to each other, and the good, already being good and not in need of another, would thus have no real need for each other, as per 215a and b. Will not the good, insofar as he is good, be in the measure sufficient for himself, and the sufficient has no need of anything by virtue of his sufficiency, and if a man has no need of anything, he will not cherish anything. Having discarded the position of like being friend to like, Socrates now puts forward the alternative of unlike being friend to unlike. He reinforces this by referring to the apparent attraction of opposites in nature, such as dry to wet, cold to hot, and emptiness to fullness. However, just as soon as this position is established, Socrates abandons it as reaching a monstrous conclusion, as per 216b. But is the just a friend of the unjust, or the temperate of the profligate, or the good of the bad? I do not think that could be so. But yet, I urged, if one thing is friend to another on this principle of opposition, these things too must need be friends. Socrates now puts forward a third hypothesis, that the good is the friend of that which is neither good nor bad, and that this neutral element is motivated to befriend the good because of the presence of surrounding evil. It is likened to when a person in illness needs medical treatment, as per 217a and b. For instance, we have only to consider a body in health to see that it has no need of doctoring or assistance. It is well enough as it is, and so no one in health is friend to a doctor on account of his health. But the sick man is, I imagine, on account of his disease. Now, disease is a bad thing, and medicine is a beneficial and good. And a body, of course, taken as a body, is neither good nor bad, but a body is compelled by disease to welcome and love medicine. Initially, Socrates and Lysis agree that this answer seems to be good, but once again, Socrates rejects it because he believes the ultimate cause of friendship cannot be for the sake of something else, and so evil cannot be the motivation and cause for friendship. He proposes that if evil was to be removed, then surely friendship, which is, if not good, is at least neutral, shall remain, as per 221b and c. Now, if evil things are abolished, is there any reason why the things that are not evil should be abolished along with the evil, so that those desires which are neither good nor bad will exist even when the bad things are abolished? Now, is it possible for a man, when he desires and loves, to have no friendly feeling towards that which he desires and loves? Thus, certain things will continue to be friendly, it seems, when all evil things are abolished. It cannot be that if evil was the cause of a thing being friendly, one thing should be friendly to another when evil is abolished. For when a cause is abolished, that thing can no longer exist. Socrates now puts forward a final thesis. He states that perhaps desire, which is neither good nor evil, is the cause of friendship, and that this desire is caused by congeniality, as opposed to likeness between two things, which would overcome the issue of the like not requiring like. However, this investigation is rather underdeveloped, and Lysis and Menexenus are led to deduce that congeniality is simply likeness restated. At this point, the boys' tutors break up the discussion and take them away. So what do we make of Plato's Lysis as a whole, and the Socratic dialectic with Lysis in particular? The dialogue focuses on the concept of philia, being friendship, derived from philos, or love between friends. However, in the framing discussion with Hippothales, Socrates discusses eros, the erotic love that Hippothales feels towards Lysis. By the end of the dialogue, Plato has put forward a rough model for finding the true definition of friendship. It must explain why two people need or desire each other, but cannot allow for the apparently absurd conclusion of the good desiring the evil. This conclusion is similar to Socrates' attempt to demonstrate to Hippothales the correct method of wooing his love, building affection without corruption on either account. Thus, Plato has spun an interconnected web between eros and philos, based on the common ground of desire. The issue of desire for Socrates in this dialogue is that it appears to be dependent upon difference, being unlikeness. However, this difference results in the absurd position of the good desiring the evil. Notably, desire in this dialogue is neither good nor evil, but neutral, like hunger, a position which Socrates uses to throw out evil as the cause of people seeking out the good of friendship. Similarly, we can look at Socrates' demand that friends be useful to each other, which is used to rule out the good being friend to the good on the basis that they don't need each other, as an attempt to provide a hook, something to be desired from the beloved from the lover. The issue of desire, love, and friendship is punctuated with the discussion of the good, neutral, and evil. But unlike Plato's later works, it does not give a sustained attempt at examining the nature of the good. It is taken as a given that friendship is a good, and that goodness motivates friendship, but it is this definition that causes the most grief in the inquiry. I would argue that, although that the dialogue fails to reach a point where any theory of friendship is endorsed, Plato is leading us to see friendship as akin to the desire for good and harmony. This is, in part, why Socrates rejects the evil being friend with the evil, for not only are they unable to do good for one another, but because of their own internal strife, they are unable to do good for themselves.